Hello, I'm Adam Houldsworth, the Life Sciences reporter at IAM, and today I'm at the London offices of Benevolent AI, and I'm speaking to the company's Vice President for Intellectual Property, Gareth Jones, who's going to be one of our panelists at the forthcoming IAM Pharma and Biotech IP event at the end of January in London. So, Gareth, nice to speak to you.
Thank you.
You're going to be talking about the convergence between tech and the life sciences and what that might mean for IP practitioners. So before we get into intellectual property, I wondered whether you could just give me a little overview of what Benevolent AI does, how it's disrupting the life sciences sector, and what your role is.
Sure. So Benevolent AI is a company using technology, AI technology, machine learning technology to really transform the way that drug discovery is done. And my role here is as Vice President of Intellectual Property, so I look after the various aspects of intellectual property for this business, whether that's from a patent perspective or a data perspective and anything else that kind of fits under that broad IP umbrella.
Great. I guess something that people would be really interested in hearing a little bit about is what the role of AI might look like in 5 or 10 years' time in the life sciences, and how significant the change will be.
So I think we're in a really exciting period of time at the moment. I think AI and other kind of emerging technologies have such a potential to disrupt a huge variety of industries, and pharma is absolutely one of those that it's kind of really well placed to disrupt. I think from my perspective, I can see a bunch of different changes coming. So I can see perhaps the tech first approach to drug discovery that companies like Benevolent AI are pioneering will become the primary source for novel treatments going forward. I can see the successful big pharma companies will be the ones that will perhaps understand the dramatic kind of and significant effort they're going to have to undertake to transform their businesses to take on that new kind of tech first approach. And I guess ultimately, and perhaps most excitingly, is the fact that these new technologies and approaches to drug discovery will bring down the cost of the process, make it more efficient and faster, make it more accurate through things like precision medicine, and ultimately end up with cheaper new treatments and perhaps disease areas that become commercially viable where today maybe they're not.
Excellent. You've spent most of your career working in intellectual property in the tech space, and I suppose your work at Benevolent has brought you more into contact with the life sciences industry than you've previously been. So I wondered, has that changed your work in any significant respect?
Yeah, quite dramatically, actually.
Right.
So yeah, as you said, my background is tech, so life sciences is relatively new to me, and once I came into this role, and so there's the science side has been a dramatic learning curve, so that's been really interesting. But also on the IP side, kind of IP strategy for pharma is very different from IP strategy for tech, and so it's been fascinating to kind of learn more about that and then try and work out how we combine a business that combines science and tech together, how we then do the same for IP strategy.
And what about in terms of the monetization of IP? Is that a different proposition when working with people in the life sciences?
In what sense?
I suppose I was just thinking whether or not the partnerships that you enter into are different in any sense, whether the negotiations are different or whether they look for different types of IP protection, or anything along those lines, really.
So I guess as a business, we have two main forms in which we monetize what we do. One is our own internal drug pipeline, so we develop AI technology ourselves and then apply it ourselves. So we have our own internal scientists that will take that technology and use it and develop our own kind of novel treatments. We also collaborate and partner quite heavily with others in the industry. So we have kind of collaborations with large pharmaceutical companies to help them develop their own pipeline using our technology as part of that. And so those partnerships can be incredibly complex, and the monetization of that piece can be very difficult. But then looking back at our internal kind of pipeline, the output, apart from the scale is dramatically different from traditional kind of pharma out licensing. A lot of the other aspects to it are very similar.
Okay, brilliant. To the extent that you've been brought into contact with other pharmaceuticals companies and life sciences companies, Do you have an idea at this stage what the convergence between tech and pharma will mean for IP strategies, for them, as well as for the tech companies who are increasingly becoming involved in the sector?
So I think the kind of emergence of AI technology and so on will have a big impact on IP in a number of different ways. I think in the pharma industry there'll be some tweaks to IP strategy. So for example, with precision medicine, perhaps that will have a big impact on your jurisdictional IP strategy, in terms of maybe you'll have a new drug product that works on 90% of the population in one jurisdiction and 10% in another, and so that might have these kind of smaller evolution of IP strategy. But I think there's also some real big dramatic changes that or at least there's a couple of big issues that are top of my mind at the moment. So one of which is AI as an inventor and the knock-on implications of that, and the other would be around data licensing. So yeah, on AI as an inventor, I think there's a whole range of issues. Do we allow machines to be inventors? If so, or even if not, what are the knock-on implications of that in terms of how does that affect inventive step? How does it affect the skilled person in the art and other aspects of patentability? And then if you have those patentability issues, what does that then do for pharma business models going forward?
And where are we with that? Is that still a question that's going to be raised years into the future, or do you think these questions will be put to the test in the next few years? Well,
I think most of the patent offices have been relatively clear on what the law is today, and that's that machines cannot be named inventors. But I mean, there's been a lot of activity in the space at the moment. There are people really trying to test that system, and I think it will be really interesting to watch what happens in this space and how that impacts businesses that may have that as part of their kind of future.
So with regard to data licensing, could you tell me a little bit more about that?
So I think as AI technology becomes more and more prevalent throughout all industries, but particularly pharma, data is a key piece to artificial intelligence. So a lot of technology is built upon the data that goes into it. And so I think we'll find that pharma companies and others will be requiring huge volumes of data from a variety of different sources. And I think a number of IP issues will end up in those data licensing conversations. So if you need to acquire data from third parties, there's a lot of open questions and ambiguity around data licensing, understanding. So if you have a number of data sources going into a piece of technology, who owns the combination of all of those data sources and who has the rights to those? Who owns the output that comes out? And what about the intermediate pieces in the middle? And I think there's a number of really complex IP discussions to have, and I think a lot of the data providers and people in industry are still trying to get up to speed with what AI means for them and how that's going to impact their business models. And so I think any IP professional working in kind of a transactions aspect of the role will probably get dragged into data licensing kind of conversations going forward.
That's really interesting. And what about IP professionals who don't work on the transaction side? Will they have to think more about how to protect data, trade secrets, things like that, or will that not be so much of an issue?
So I think it's in the benefit of a lot of people for more data to be shared. So the more data is shared, the bigger an impact technologies like AI can have on society and in drug discovery, the more kind of novel treatments we can have. So I think the more we can share data, the better. But there are certainly some challenges with doing that. There will be some aspects of proprietary data that people will want to protect in certain ways, and I think there are ways of doing that. But I think IP professionals will certainly need to understand what those options are, and then if data is to be shared, then to how to share that in a way that protects both sides. So if it's your data and you're sharing it, how do you protect that so that it works, for your business, whilst also for the person using that data?
Great. And so, on the transactional side, what might this mean in practice? I know you said that it's going to raise some complex questions, but can we put our finger on any particular changes that will need to be made? So
I think in data licensing, there's a lot of ambiguity at the moment. So partly because the technology has advanced faster than the data licensors have been able to catch up with, and there's a lot of misunderstanding around how the data is used in that technology and what the impact will be. So a lot of data licenses aren't necessarily fit for purpose. So I see potential for more standardized approach to data licensing, and there are some ongoing efforts by other people in the industry to try and standardize this. And I think that will help not only with the ambiguity pieces, but also for organizations that hold data and are willing to share it, but don't necessarily have the licensing skills or resources to be able to do that most effectively, not only for them, but for the people using it.
Excellent. Are there any other implications for in-house IP teams from this convergence between tech and pharma?
So I think if I had to recommend a number of things that IP professionals should be thinking about, I guess the first would absolutely be to try and understand more about AI and the technology, how it's being used in their businesses, how it's being used in relevant other businesses outside, and particularly what's the potential of the technology and where it might go. And I think that will feed into a lot of other kind of discussions. I think that's the base layer. Thinking about some of the other pieces IP professionals should be thinking about. So one is the AI as an inventor piece that we talked about, and trying to understand and predict how that might impact their business, what might the knock-on implications be, and perhaps scenario planning for those, and thinking about maybe other IP rights or other ways of protecting their product. And then lastly, I would think about data, and I think as IP professionals that are involved in transaction kind of activity will likely get dragged into data licensing, then they need to get up to speed, if not already, in areas like copyright and database rights, and how to protect and share data, and how AI technology fits into that so that you can license it appropriately.
Excellent. So these are going to be issues that you'll be speaking about in more depth with other experts at our 2020 Pharma and Biotech IP event. So I wondered, you've obviously got a lot to contribute to the conversation, but what sorts of insights are you hoping to get from the event, and what is it that attracted you to speak at the event? I've
been to the event once before and really enjoyed it, and found it an excellent opportunity to understand more of the broader issues that are impacting kind of the life sciences industry and the players within it. I think for us as a comparatively young business in the industry, I think it's really interesting to think about some of the aspects of IP that we've not yet hit, and to try and see how the experts in the industry are tackling those. So that will be very interesting. And I think ultimately going to the event is an excellent opportunity for us to kind of interact with other people in the industry, build some relationships today, and perhaps see how others in the industry see what we're doing, and also to try and understand the kind of challenges that they're facing, and perhaps where collaborations together may help fulfill kind of the strategic objectives of both organisations.
Excellent. Gareth, thanks very much for speaking to me.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks.